Welcome to the How Did They Do It Real Estate Podcast. Have you ever wondered how people succeed in real estate and what steps they took to get there? If so, this podcast is for you. Your hosts, Selah and Eileen Prack, interview top experts in the real estate community to share with you their real estate journey and how they achieved massive success. Our goal is to provide you with valuable real estate resources and to help you apply it to your own real estate goal. Welcome to today's episode of the How Did They Do It Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, Eileen Prack, and we've brought back Tom Zeeb, who was just recently on our podcast because he gave us a super high level, but a pretty good introduction about negotiating tips. And so we wanted to bring him back onto the show so he can give us a further in-depth walkthrough of how he negotiates within real estate deals, how we can apply it to ourselves. So you guys are in for a super treat. We'll break this up into a 2-part episode. So make sure to check out part 1 and part 2. And so Tom, let's just get right into it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me back.
Thank you, Tom. If you guys want to hear more about his really cool background, his story about how he had to experience a near-death experience before it opened up his mind, he got started into real estate, built up his career ever since then, did hundreds and hundreds of deals up until now using these same negotiation tips. Check out episode 705.
Cool.
So,
705. Good
yes.
Numbers. I like numbers in there. It's good.
So Tom, let's just jump right into it. Let's get started into the negotiations. Give us a top level of how you came up with this framework and how do you apply this to your own real estate and how you've been able to, share it with other people and how it has worked out for them.
Okay, absolutely. I'm going to share my screen as well. That's the workbook that I gave you guys to have on the download link. So you can grab the workbook, and I encourage you to draw along with me and follow along with me because when you're interactive like that, that's one of the things that helps you really absorb what I'm teaching and understand it. So I get super excited about the negotiation side of the business, and negotiation is great in any business, but wow, it's particularly awesome in the real estate business because it's just, right, we've got big numbers, we got lots going on, there's some really big gains to be made, and you never make money faster than when you're negotiating. That's a kind of a cliche or a phrase in real estate negotiation, but it's so true. You never make money faster than when you're negotiating. Yet the weird thing is, they don't seem to teach it anywhere. I find that absolutely bizarre. It's not taught in school. Maybe people that went to business school got a negotiation class, but it's usually on negotiating a contract or something corporate, not the level of negotiation that we need as entrepreneurs, as real estate entrepreneurs. So I've put together what I call my negotiation stack. And stack has multiple meanings and is an acronym. So I'm going to go through all of that as well. And you'll get a sense of what's happening. And then I'm going to show you how that overall process, and I want to drill down to some really exact techniques that you can be using immediately. Start practicing now and use them on your very next call, your very next deal, your very next buyer, seller, whoever it is you're dealing with in real estate, and start putting these into practice and watch what happens. That's all I ask. Try them. Watch what happens. You'll be an exponentially better negotiator in a few minutes than you are right now. And I know that's kind of a tall order, but I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to do it. So it'll be awesome. So go through that with me. So I want to get really focused on things here in negotiation. There's a problem generally in negotiation. If you don't know what to say to a motivated seller, that can freeze people up a lot. Motivated seller or anyone that you're negotiating with, sometimes we don't know what to say and we freeze because of that. And sometimes it's before you even get to that point. You're afraid of talking to people. Therefore, you avoid talking to people because if you're afraid of it and you avoid it, then you don't have to face your fear. So sometimes negotiations fail before they even start because we're just afraid of what on earth do we say to people. But there's a second problem, and that's what if you don't know how to say it? It's not just what we say, how we say things and how we come across is important. And so getting a sense of managing that process, of becoming comfortable with our tonations and the way we sound and our general confidence level, all that's important too. And we need to practice to get better at that. But it also brings up a third problem. I mean, if you don't have specific techniques to get somebody to say yes to you, then they stay stuck on no. No is the default position. Most people they say no. until they're brought to a point and have something dangled in front of them where they want to say yes, or they need to say yes to be able to advance forward and get what they want. So the problem on our end as real estate investors is if you don't know how to move somebody from saying no to saying yes, you don't get what you want. Because everything that you want to get out of this deal, out of your motivated seller or your proper buyer or the person on the other side of the negotiation table, that's only going to happen and you're only going to get to your goal once they say yes. So we got to get them to say yes. That's really, really important. So
I think you brought up really good points really quick because as you start the negotiations and you, especially if you're in the beginning or maybe if you're later on and you don't really have these negotiation like tactics or how this is kind of walked through and there's a particular pathway that you can take to make you a little bit more successful than if you had just gone without a framework. You're on the phone, you're talking to the motivated seller or you're talking to the other person on the other line. Your palms are sweaty. You're just thinking like, I don't know what to say or like exactly how do I say this or how do I frame it in a way that creates a good solution or a great or like a win-win kind of situation for the both of us where one person is not just walking away feeling like I just got cheated out of this entire deal or I have a really bad taste in my mouth with this person because you want to work with them on a continual basis. It's not just a one-time transaction.
We don't want it to be right. We want to have it happen again and again. People have, maybe even if it's not that specific person, people know other people. And a lot of your business comes from referrals. And if birds of a feather flock together, then we want to make sure we treat everyone right so that they had a good experience with us and they want to refer others over to us.
Absolutely.
That brings up an interesting point. What I'm teaching is win-win negotiation. And some people will say that that's cheesy. That's corny. It doesn't work. How can you possibly have win-win? Well, of course it's possible. The thing is, if you're not arguing about the same thing, then I can win and you can win. So generally as a real estate investor, I'm looking for a motivated seller. Well, they're motivated because something's wrong in their life. Maybe something's wrong with the property or they've inherited it or they're getting divorced or they lost their job or they're moving into town or out of town. There's something that they have a pressing problem. It's that problem is their number one thing that they need solved. It's not the price. But I'm an investor. My number one thing is the price. I got to get the price right to make the numbers work. But if they need to get their problem solved and I need to get my price, those are two different things. So I can solve their problem and still get my price, meaning they win and I win, and we have a true win-win situation because we're not fighting about the same thing. If they need price and I need price, there's going to be a winner, there's going to be a loser. So I encourage you to always be marketing for that motivated seller. That way, the negotiation is already that much easier because you can solve their problem, get your price, and have that win-win scenario, which, again, people think doesn't exist, but it totally exists. Just got to make sure you're not arguing about the same issue. That's the importance of having a motivated seller in our business. And I think you'll notice in most real estate deals, the more motivated the person is, the more problems they have. That's where the greatest deals come from, because you're able to put together those situations that solve their problem, let them move on, and give us the price that we need so that we can go and do what we do best.
What would you say is the majority of motivated sellers are they really focused on the price point of it? Or as you continue to break down and you ask those questions and dive in deeper to what motivates them actually, the underlying motivation behind it, is it really price at the end or is it something else?
It's something else. Absolutely. It's their problem. It's solving the problem, stopping that pain, stopping the bleeding, whatever situation has come up in their life that's causing them, it's causing them pain, it's causing them heartache, it's causing them sorrow, it's causing them stress, and they want to be rid of that problem. And when you're after people with those problems, you can solve those. You can solve them by having them sell you the property. And you put that deal together, right? And now you know exactly what to do with their property because that's the kind of a real estate investor you are. So you're always better off going after people with the problems because it's going to make that negotiation all that much easier.
All right. Thanks, Tom.
You're welcome. So when we take these problems, right, these three main problems, and we know we want to create a win-win situation, we've got to spin those problems around and turn them on their head because when we get negotiation right, you learn to say the right things at the right time. I don't think how nice that would be. Someone always said the right things at the right time to you. You learn to say each and every one of those things with confidence. Confidence winds up being the game changer. Just the way you talk to somebody and that quiet confidence that's conveyed. I've got a couple of students I work with on advanced negotiation. And one of them, his name is Mike. He said to me, he goes, Tom, I don't know what's going on. Just lately, I have more and more people saying yes to me. And I said, well, if you think about it, you're quietly confident. You know, you've had so much practice now. You're not shy anymore on the phone. You make the offers. You don't care what the response is. Yeah, you want them to say yes, but you're prepared for the no. And that quiet confidence comes across, and it conveys a real sense of professionalism. And people go, I want that guy or that gal to solve my problems because there's just something about you. It's because you're quietly confident. Confidence is that ultimate game changer. And it's this combination of saying the right things at the right time, saying everything with confidence, and actually going through the process that I'm about to show you, all these different steps of the negotiation process. That's what winds up sealing the deal. And a lot of people think, geez, Tom, these techniques, I'm going to show you 6 techniques today. Aren't these techniques a little weird? Don't people feel like it's a bit of a weird game? No, they don't feel like it's a game at all. They go for it every time. They go through it, they go, oh, and you start to work their price down and get them to say yes. It's not a guarantee they say yes, but you have a much higher percentage of people saying yes because you've worked them through a set process. And then if anyone else comes in, your competitors come in, they respond to someone else's marketing and they finally get called back by the other person, they don't care anymore because they're locked into you because you've been taking them through this negotiation dance and they trust you. They've gotten to know you. They like you. You're the only logical choice now. That's the importance of following the negotiation stack system because it gets you to that finish line where you're able to seal the deal.
I think when you said confidence, I think that is a really big part of coming to the table and being able to have that presence and having those conversations turn out well as well, because sometimes you can say the right things at the right time, but you don't have that confidence because there might be a little bit of the imposter syndrome, or it's like, well, can they see through what I'm trying to do? Or like, there's a little bit of nervousness and there's a little bit of, hesitation with it. And so if you can come across with confidence, it's a challenging thing to get to when you're especially beginning in your negotiations or you're early on in your career. It is a little bit challenging.
Absolutely. Now there's one way I have of getting used to that you are truly confident. And some people aren't going to want to hear it, but I'm assuming you want me to say it.
Of course. Yes.
Practice. I'm going to, later on in the session, I'm going to teach you 6 specific techniques. All I ask, like I said before, is that you use them, practice them, try them. You'll start getting results and that'll become addictive. And then I just want you to practice, because the more kind of blind practice you make, you just cold call and try. Use the techniques every chance you get and watch what happens. They become a part of you. And now you're just kind of spitting them out without thinking. And that comes across as confident. There's no hesitation anymore.
Yeah, I think people would sometimes compare it to like working out a muscle. And so the more you work it out, it just like becomes like muscle memory.
Yes. Next thing you know, you're stronger. Next thing you know, you're thinner. Next thing you know, you're faster because you've been working that muscle out. It's the exact same thing here. Excellent comparison.
All right.
All right. So let me define out STACK because I think that'll help you understand the process and the system. So I call it my negotiation stack because of the 52 different negotiation techniques that I use. And I'm going to teach 6 of them to you today. What happens is that there's not one order that you use them in. They're stackable. And you just keep stacking based on that individual conversation you're having with somebody. And if you haven't noticed, all individuals are different. So when you're talking to the first person, you wind up having to use the techniques in one order. But you're talking to somebody else and they're totally different. They have different problems. They got, a different way of going about things. They say different things when you ask them questions. Well, you take the same techniques and you put them together in a different order. You stack them differently. So you wind up with a customized stack every time you go into negotiations. So that's why I want to teach you the raw tools, and then you'll get a sense of, oh, they said this, I need to use this technique. Oh, I'm going to open with this technique. I'm going to drive the price down further with this technique. I'm going to help wrap it up and get it closed with this technique. And you put together a customized stack each and every time. So that's why I call it the stack overall. But then to help you remember it and understand the process, STACK's also an acronym. So it starts off with the S. That's strategy. So strategy, you have to have a strategy down for what's your overall goal in the negotiation. Strategy is that high level idea. What are you after? What's the main goal? And now we can figure out how we're going to get there. Well, we're going to get there by putting a bunch of tactics into place. Now, tactics are very different from strategy. A lot of people get tactics and strategy confused. Your tactics are the individual moves you make that help you achieve the strategy, your strategy being that overall goal. Some people, I think, just go about thinking as long as they know what moves to make. But if you're making moves with no end in sight and no action, no direction or goal, that's pointless. So you start with the strategy, which is to win the negotiation. You got to define out what that means for each individual scenario that you're in. And then you'll use the specific tactics, the tactics that I'll teach you in a few minutes. Overall, we have to have an angle. So what's the angle that we're aiming for in the negotiation? Some of angle comes down to understanding the person we're talking to, the personality type, the way they talk, the hidden grammar of things that they're saying. And so that's a matter of listening and then kind of getting a sense of that. This can get a little more advanced as we go. I'm not going to touch on it any deeper today because it's, like I say, it can go a lot deeper, but think of that angle, like how you are approaching the negotiation, how it is that you plan on talking to this person, because that goes into your overall stack as well. The C is for confidence. Confidence, like I say, is that ultimate game changer. It comes across quietly in your voice. And I'll tell you, when you get more confident in your negotiations, your business starts to boom. You get more confident in your personal life, all your relationships and all your interpersonal dealings with people just start to improve massively. It's that important. The confidence angle, confidence that you have and that you convey makes all the difference in the world. All of this is going to come from having a sense of know-how. We got to have the know-how of how to achieve what our goal is in the negotiation. And if that goal is to get somebody to say yes to us and to accept our offer, we have to have that knowledge of, all right, where are we going to start and how are we going to get there? I used the metaphor a few minutes ago about it's a dance, right? We want to have a dance with somebody. It's not, don't just go for the kill. You kind of get in there and talk a little bit. How would you like to dance and start to move, show them, and kind of feel out how things are going to go and make that happen. I think too many people try to go right for the kill, like go right for the question. Now, give me the deal. Say yes. Well, but people aren't like that. We don't want to go right for the yes. You kind of got to build up to it first. And that's really important. That's a big part of negotiation. So there's 3 phases to a negotiation. And these 3 phases of negotiation are also the categories that my techniques fall into. So as I'm going to teach you a half dozen techniques in a few minutes, I want you to recognize that they fall into one or more of 3 categories. So they might be just one. You might use them in 2 scenarios. You might use them in all 3 of the phases of a negotiation. So I want to frame that out up front so you can understand what that is and how it works. The first set of techniques that we have, or the first category that they fall into from the phases of negotiation, is quite simply, you have techniques to get the ball rolling. Icebreakers. What do you say to somebody when you first talk to them, be that on the phone or in person? How do you start to broach the topic of price or terms or of what they're after? We have to have things to grease the skids a little bit, warm them up, get them talking, because the more they talk, the more we'll actually get the answers we want from them, because we're going to be able to build that rapport and keep that moving. So there are certain techniques that we simply use to get the ball rolling. It's a really important part of the process. It's also somewhere that I find a lot of people freeze up. It's almost stage fright. They're just afraid to start the conversation. So having techniques that you can fall back on that you just use without really having to think about it, that get the ball rolling, it's massively comforting to people because you're over any sort of fear of starting. And it's odd that people are actually afraid to start what they want to do. Everyone wants the result, but sometimes they're afraid to start the process to get to that result. So having simple things you can do to just get moving, that's really important.
I think the get the ball rolling and getting started of it, where the anxiety tends to come from my personal opinion, is because it sets the stage, the tone for the rest of the conversation. And so then if you are feeling that in the beginning, if you don't set the tone, if you don't frame it correctly, it's going to set the mood and it's going to result in a negative result for you, then that's where that nervousness comes out of, because it's like there's a lot that hinges on that first getting started, beginning conversations.
Yeah. And you let that nervousness show at the beginning. Nervousness is kind of the opposite of confidence. So you're already not presenting yourself in the best light. So what you'll see with the techniques is that, hey, I could use this to get the ball rolling. This is just a conversation starter. This is something I would do at the beginning each time. And that gets things moving. And then you don't have to worry about it as much. So it's a good spot to be, which would then lead us to our next batch, which we want to have techniques to get the price down. Now, I'm assuming most of the time here, we're going to be talking about getting the price down. If you're on the side of the negotiation table where you're trying to get the price up, fine. Use the exact same techniques to push the price up. But I'm thinking as real estate investors, and we're trying to get deals, we're usually trying to get them under contract for a lower price, lower, no matter what kind of deal that it is. So we want to have techniques for doing that. Techniques specifically to drive the price down. And you always want to keep pushing a little bit more than you think to actually get them to their true bottom line. It's always a little bit lower than you think. And I think people are often afraid of that at the beginning, Eileen. They don't seem to, they don't push far enough. They kind of accept what people say at the beginning. There's an awkwardness about trying to get someone's price even lower.
And I remember on our last interview, you had talked about how here in the United States, it's not something that's ingrained in us. It's not part of the culture. And so like when you go to the other cultures and you go and it's part of their, everyday talks, their business, you go to, the market, you're negotiating every single day. So it's ingrained in your culture and how you interact with other people versus here in the United States. It's a little bit uncommon. So it sets that uncomfortable situation, that like nervousness, because you don't know how to approach, the bargaining and the negotiation parts of it, because you're not doing it on a daily basis.
Yeah. So when you get comfortable with that, now think about it. If you're in the United States, you're going to be exponentially stronger than everyone else because you're ready for that. You know what to do. You're using techniques and they don't really have any particular guard against it. And if you're negotiating overseas or with a foreign-born seller or foreign-born seller, buyer, anybody that you're negotiating with, you'll at least be strongly matched, which is good. So it puts you in a better position overall to learn how to negotiate properly.
Right.
The third phase then you come on to is you have to have techniques after you've gotten the ball rolling and you're getting the price down. There's going to come a point where you got to wrap it up. You have to have techniques to quite simply get it closed. Too many people seem to think that it just is going to magically come to a head. No, you've got to ask them to say yes or say no. You got to ask them to give you an answer. You got to ask them to come to agreement. You got to ask them to sign your contract. So sometimes people freeze on that. So you have techniques that can get it closed, particularly if you get to an impasse. I'll give you one specific technique for that in a little bit, where you get to an impasse and you're stuck. How do we move to get to a compromise, come to an agreement, and actually get that deal closed? So you can't let it sit there forever. You eventually got to make a move. And that means you have to ask for the sale. You have to ask them to give you an answer, be that a yes or a no. Either answer is fine. Obviously, we're happy when they say yes, but if they say no or maybe, it just means you got more work to do. You're not there yet. Maybe more time needs to pass by. Maybe you need to go back and keep pushing a little bit more and get the price down a little bit further and get the value of the solution you're providing up, right? So price down from them and value and solution of yours up. That way you can get them to finally say yes.
And I think that the last part of it, the getting it closed and ask part of it, like you said, it's where people tend to freeze up because now you're asking for a resolution and then that nervousness comes back out on, well, if they say no, then that's the end of it. And I've failed in my endeavors in this particular conversation and negotiation strategy.
So I gotta be careful how I say this. No is not no. All right. No is no for now. It's no because you haven't addressed all of their needs yet. You haven't gotten the problem solved for them proper. So it's not a no forever. It's a no for now. So it's just like maybe. Maybe is as good as a no. Maybe it's not a yes. So it's not a maybe forever. It's a maybe for right now. That means you have to go back and kind of go back to the process and keep bringing it into play because that's what's going to happen. And there is a nervousness to it. I know why people avoid wanting to get it closed is because you're effectively asking for rejection. I mean, you're putting yourself out there and now somebody's going to say no to you. That's devastating to a lot of people. I want to get it so that you're practiced enough that you're so used to hearing no that you don't care anymore. Like, great, one more no, whatever. Eventually that will be the yes that you're looking for.
Right.
Now, I think I want to dig into some specific techniques. I'm going to give you 6 specific techniques. I'm also going to show you what the overall flow for using them is, but I think we should save that till part 2.
All right. So check back in part 2. Catch you guys in a bit. And thank you for listening to our podcast today, brought to you by Bonavest Capital. We would really appreciate it if you can go to iTunes right now and leave a rating and written review. Also, please don't forget to subscribe so you can always get the latest episodes. You can also connect with us on Facebook, How Did They Do It Real Estate. We'd love to hear your feedback and any topics that you're interested in for future episodes. Lastly, to learn more about us, you can go to bonavestcapital.com and fill out the Contact Us page so you can speak to us directly. Nothing on the show should be considered as specific personal advice. Please consult your legal, tax, and real estate professionals for individualized advice.